Good evening and welcome to this edition of the Planning Committee on the 4th of November 2025. Welcome to those that are joining us online, those in the audience and any esteemed guests that we've got in the room tonight. Before I go any further, I'd just like to remind members of the Planning Committee that there is planning training to be held on the 27th of November at 6 p.m. and that's online. You should have had an invite through your electronic email system. If not, then please chase that up. So that's the 27th of November. Do you have any apologies for this evening? I've got apologies in writing for Councillors Dean and Crisp. Is there any more? And that's no.
Can I just say, Mr. Chairman, I don't know if you have had apologies from Councillor Beresford, who was meant to be substituting for Councillor Crisp this evening. But this afternoon, she's had some problem with, I think, some form of caravan, which she needs to gain access to, but can't gain access to. So she's engaged with that. Okay. So she was the substitute this evening, but she can't come this evening.
Thank you, Councillor. We'll make a note of that. Thank you. That's noted. Item 2 on the agenda. Is there any declarations of interest in the agenda this evening? And that's a negative response. Thank you, councillors. Item 3 on the agenda. Minutes of the previous meeting. Are we happy and content to receive that as a true and accurate record of proceedings? Thank you very much. Brings us on to the first substantive item of the business tonight, and that's application for other development land south of Pepper Street, Keele. Over to Officers Charles. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this application seeks planning in principle for 69 dwellings at land south of Pepper Street in Keele. So the site forms part of a piece of land south of Pepper Street, which is opposite the Seddon Homes development. We've got Silverdale to the northeast and Keele to the south. Here we have a few photos of the site as well. It does contain a number of trees and it slopes quite steeply down towards Pepper Street. The site also falls within the green belt. So when considering a planning in principle application, we can only consider the principle of development. If permission is granted, then a second application referred to as a technical details consent would need to be submitted to address all of the matters relating to the site. So that includes things such as visual impact, highways, ground conditions, and so on. So with respect of the planning assessment, the council still can't demonstrate an up-to-date housing supply, and the tilted balanced approach set out in the NPPF must still be applied. So in sustainability terms, although the site is outside the settlement boundary of Silverdale and Keele, the site is considered to be a relatively sustainable location. Nearby are 2 primary schools and a selection of retail and food outlets, and the site is also within easy walking distance of a nearby bus stop. So it's acknowledged that both local and national policy seeks to provide new housing development within existing settlement boundaries and on previously developed land where available. Nevertheless, this site would contribute to meeting the housing need for the borough in a sustainable location. So in respect of the impact on the greenbelt, the applicant has submitted supporting information to seek to demonstrate that the proposal would utilise greybelt land. So greybelt land can include previously developed land or any other land that does not contribute to meeting the purposes of criteria A, B or D listed in paragraph 143 of the NPPF. So these criteria are on the screen. So these are essentially to check the unrestricted sprawl of large built-up areas, to prevent neighbouring towns merging into one another, and to preserve the setting and special character of historic towns. So with respect of criteria A, the application site does fall outside of any recognised settlement boundary, but National Guidance notes that villages should not be classed as large built-up areas, and this definition should only be applied to towns or larger settlements. As the application site is bounded by an existing residential development to the north and west and a large protected woodland to the south and east, it would therefore not be at risk of creating unrestricted sprawl. So with regards to criteria B, there are no nearby towns within close proximity of the site which would be at risk of merging. So the nearest town is Newcastle-under-Lyme, which is over 3 kilometres to the east. And regarding criteria D, Keele is not a historic town, but it's rather classed as a village, so this restriction doesn't apply. Also, the site doesn't fall within any of the criteria set out within footnote 7 of paragraph 143 of the NPPF, so that relates to designations such as national parks and sites of special scientific interest. So on that basis, it's concluded that the site constitutes as grey belt land and is therefore an acceptable form of development in the green belt. The application is therefore recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Charles. I have 2 speakers on this item. I'll take the objector, and I think it's Councillor Jones who's going to be joining us online. Speaking remotely tonight, he's satisfied the special circumstances to be able to do this, or this to be a regular occurrence from members. But being as this councillor called in the application, I think it's only fair that he presents the case this evening. So, Councillor Jones, are you with us? Good. Jeff, have you got him online?
Had a message from Dave Jones that he's online and planning, so he's trying to.
Thank you. Thank you. Give him another minute, and otherwise we'll have to move on.
He says that it says chat is disabled, that you're not able to hear.
She needs flying. I'm just speaking to her later.
Okay, I'll make the unusual route, and I shall take the next speaker in the hope that Councillor Jones will be able to join us by the time the speaker's finished. So in this case, I'll take the supporter of the scheme, Mr. Michael Askew. Would you like to come forward, sir? You have 5 minutes to present your case. After 4 minutes, you'll be reminded you've got a minute left. You may begin when you wish.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Michael Askew. I am speaking on behalf of the applicants of this application for permission in principle. The site is located in a highly sustainable location on the edge of the Newcastle urban area, directly opposite a housing development which is under construction for 99 dwellings. It is accessible on foot to a wide range of services and facilities in both Newcastle and Keele via well-lit footways. There are a pair of bus stops located immediately adjacent to the site. The site is walkable to 2 nearby primary schools. The site is therefore considered to comprise a logical location in principle to provide a residential development and, importantly, to contribute towards delivering the housing that the council needs to provide. The site also comprises low-grade agricultural land. In fact, the land comprises gravel and concrete that was formed through the widening of the original Pepper Street itself. The tenant farmer who has farmed the wider land for over 40 years has written to the council to confirm that the land is not suitable to graze his cattle due to its topography and its rubble construction. The adjoining neighbour, David Hughes, has also written in to support the scheme. Whilst the site falls within the green belt, your officers agree that the site is an appropriate form of development by virtue of it being a grey belt site. Firstly, it does not strongly contribute to purposes A, B or D of the reasons for including land within the green belt. Indeed, the council's latest independent green belt review, which was produced in July 2024, confirms that the wider site has no contribution to purposes A or D and only a weak contribution to purpose B. It is arguable that this site has even less contribution now when considering it's only a smaller portion of the wider assessment site and the subsequent updates to national guidance. Secondly, the council accept that there is an unmet need for housing in the borough. Thirdly, the council accept that the site is a sustainable location. Fourthly, the site comprises a minor development and therefore does not require the golden rules to be met. This application seeks only permission in principle. The details of the scheme will be submitted at the technical consent stage. However, it is evident that up to 9 dwellings can comfortably fit on the site, providing a high quality form of development. This is in keeping with the character and grain of the surrounding area. Future occupants of these properties would benefit from views of the surrounding countryside and would potentially lend themselves to self-built homes or larger market homes, which would attract new investment to the borough. It is therefore requested that members approve permission in principle in line with your officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Askew. You may join the audience. Any luck, Jeff? We're having difficulty securing Councillor Jones's input this evening, so in the absence of not being able to join us.
He has sent it through as a written statement if I'm allowed to read it out. But it is special.
Yes, I'll allow that.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, members, thank you for allowing me to speak. I've called this application in as the Ward Councillor for Keele, and on the basis of the consultation response submitted by Keele Parish Council, I am asking the committee to refuse permission in principle. Although the application proposes only 6 to 9 dwellings, the principle remains the same. It is development on open greenbelt. The applicant seeks to justify this on the basis that the land should be treated as grey belt. However, nothing within the council's evidence base supports that assertion. The green belt and site selection reports, including the assessments undertaken for the emerging local plan, do not classify this land as grey belt. It has not been shortlisted for release nor identified as performing only a weak green belt function. The applicant's interpretation appears to conflate unused or underdeveloped land with diminishing planning value, but the green belt tests are very clear. Land can be attractive or underused and still perform an important spatial and policy role. Bear with me, I'm just scrolling down. The applicant's interpretation appears to, This site forms part of the parcel known as KL20 within the local plan site selection methodology. That process is extensive. It looks at settlement hierarchy and sustainable growth, accessibility to services, environmental constraints, impact on character, and greenbelt purposes. Where greenbelt sites have been recommended for allocation, it has been through that systematic approach, not individual applications. KL20 did not progress. It was not recommended as a site suitable for development. The evidence identifies several reasons. It is detached from the existing settlement pattern. Development would require creation of a new artificial greenbelt boundary. It does not sustain sustainable expansion of Keele, and crucially, it contributes to the separation of Keele from Silverdale and the wider Newcastle urban area. The Greenbelt isn't just a landscape designation, it serves to maintain the distinct identity of rural settlements like Keele. KL20 plays that role. Keele is a rural village with a very strong sense of identity. The open fields around Pepper Street form a clear and important transition between Keele and the edge of Silverdale. Even a small cluster of dwellings can begin that process of coalescence. It is gradual erosion rather than a single large scheme that most often leads to settlement creep. Parish Council have rightly raised this concern. Once a principle is established, the remainder of the land becomes incrementally vulnerable. The site lies in a red impact zone for great crested newts with several ponds nearby and confirmed records in the area. National guidance is clear: where protected species are likely, the planning authority requires sufficient understanding up front before permission can be granted. To summarise, Chair, this remains development in the Green Belt. KL20 has been assessed through the same evidence-based processes that supports the local plan and was not recommended for allocation. The site contributes to the separation and rural character of Kiel. The local plan has been examined and carries meaningful weight. Ecology and site constraints are not understood to a level that justifies granting permission in principle. On that basis, and aligned with the clear position taken by Kiel Parish Council, I respectfully ask members to refuse permission in principle. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown, for delivering Councillor Jones's statement. Thank you. Members, now open it to you for debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We asked, I think, a couple of meetings ago what green belt, grey belt, what the definition of grey belt might mean for us. And I think this application is an example of just that. It means that the government has fundamentally weakened the protection of the green belt everywhere. The government has done this. We used to be able to say, development on the green belt, by default, completely inappropriate. You have to show very special circumstances before you can even think about developing in the green belt. The test is now reversed. The test is that we, as an authority, have to positively identify one of three characteristics, one of three functions that green belt is serving in paragraph 143 of the NPPF. Otherwise, we have to permit it as sustainable development in accordance with the usual rules. And it seems to me that if that is how grey belt works, and there is nothing in front of us in the report or that we've heard tonight to suggest otherwise, if that's how it works, we don't have a green belt anymore. The government has abolished it. And that's unfortunate because I don't believe it will improve delivery. The bottlenecks on house building are the trades and contractors that are available to actually build these houses, and the knackered economy that the government has bestowed upon us that means that there are restricted opportunities for people to buy homes. The market is smaller than it would otherwise be. All of which being said, our officers have explained in the report why this is recommended for approval. Was there anything, can I ask our officers, was there anything in what Councillor Jones put forward that would persuade them otherwise? Was there anything in there that we could hang a refusal on if we were so minded? Because to me, it seems as though we can either approve this tonight or we can fail to approve it, and the planning inspector will approve it. And in addition to getting potentially up to 9 houses in the future, we will also get another demerit as regards our planning decision-making ability from the National Planning Inspector. I do appreciate that Councillor Jones took the time to give that, or to via Councillor Brand to deliver that, because it's helpful to know when an application is called in what the thoughts of the councillor and the reasoning behind that is. But it did unfortunately sound to me, Chair, as though a lot of that was clutching at straws. The NPPF is explicit, and I wasn't able to identify which of those 3 bullet points, A, B, or D, that Councillor Jones was seeking to draw to our attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holland. Would you like to come back on that?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Yeah, so no, there's nothing in there which I think we can use to justify a refusal. I think it's important to note as well that the site assessments and all the work towards the local plan was actually done prior to the introduction of the grey belt idea in the NPPF as well. So that wasn't in place at the time when that was done, which is the reason that it wouldn't have assessed itself against this criteria. Just at the end point as well, regarding great crested newts and wildlife, again, that's a physical constraint of the site which we can't look at this point.
Charles. Councillor Fear.
I think Councillor Holland wished to make a secondary comment at that point, Mr. Chairman, and I'll be more than happy for him to do that first if that's what he intended.
Councillor Holland, wish to make a comeback on that? Go ahead. No. Councillor Fear.
In that case, my apologies. I fear I find myself in agreement with Councillor Holland, although I'm not happy to do so. Sustainability here, I think, is an interesting question. I think we might find it hard to say this isn't a sustainable site, given that we've given permission for a large development across the road. I think our public speaker clearly doesn't know the area. The idea that one could walk to Keele and the services at Keele easily from this site is a nonsense, an absolute nonsense. Just about arguably one could walk to the shops in Silverdale, although it's by no means a question of popping to the shops in that regard. However, I'm afraid Councillor Jones has, to some degree, I fear, been caught out by his own party. I mean, very noticeably, I think this site, we could object if we were allowed to look at section C of paragraph 143 of the MPPF. The Labour Party very carefully excluded that paragraph, which would be obtrusion into the countryside. Manifestly, that would be the case. But we're not allowed to look at that. I mean, the wording is exceptionally clear in that regard. I'd just like to ask two things of our officer. First of all, is there a definition of a town, which seems very, very important in this regard? The second question is, this is about principle. I note from the comments we've had on this application, understandably, there is a great deal of concern about the abandoned railway tunnel which runs beneath this. I would suspect some form of terraforming would be necessary to put housing on this site, which obviously would make the tunnel even closer to the surface, so to speak. But am I correct in thinking that those are matters that we would look at a secondary stage rather than this stage?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Fear. So with respect to the railway tunnel, it is exactly that. It would be something that would have to look at the technical matters stage. In essence, with these type of applications, unlike an outline application where we have to be satisfied that the details in terms of appearance and amenity and highways could be accepted, these are more speculative in nature. We're not duty bound to agree to any kind of technical matters application in the future. So there might be a physical constraint on site, which means the site could never come forward for development, but that's obviously for the applicant to address. In respect of the definition of towns, this is a question I had earlier with Rachel, and we don't know at this stage whether that's either set in terms of our own policies in the local plan identifying which settlements we should consider to be towns and villages, or whether it's just based on demographics, for example. But we don't have a clear definition at the moment. Certainly in our existing planning policy documents, they're referred to as villages, though, and not towns. The only towns in the borough would be Kidsgrove and Newcastle.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I note the word speculative with sorrow, but I note it. I just want to ask a question of the officer. Would he agree with me that it is most unfortunate that the government in the MPPF, having made this notion of towns and villages, chooses not to define a town, which leaves local authorities, not just this one, but all local authorities, in a very, very grim position?
Yeah, I would agree. It is difficult. It's quite subjective, and it doesn't give us an easy time of trying to assess these sites. I mean, historically, we would have been refusing these type of applications, and we've done that consistently and defended those successfully at appeal. So it does go against the norm, I suppose, to then sort of turn around and recommend approval for these sites. But that's really just how the policy is worded, unfortunately.
Will the councillor wish to speak, please? Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you on Councillor Jones's behalf for allowing me to read his statement. Following on from Councillor Fear's comments about not knowing the area, as Silverdale Ward Councillor, I would say that the two schools mentioned within walking distance, St Luke certainly is, and there are places at Silverdale Academy, which is a further distance away. But really, what's happening here is you're tagging on to existing infrastructure in Silverdale rather than Keele because of its proximity to the Silverdale border. So I would just make the point that we've had a lot of tagging onto that infrastructure.
Councillor Brown. Any councillors wishing to speak? Councillor Gordon.
Thank you, Chairman. I think in either the letter from the parish council or certainly one of the letters of objection, it's argued loss of viable agricultural land. From what we've heard this evening, would the officer agree with that statement? I get the impression actually that it isn't agricultural land of any great quality. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's actually considered to be low quality agricultural land, so I don't think we could pin any kind of resistance on that basis.
Any other councillor wishing to speak or be minded to make any sort of proposal at this stage? Councillor Holland.
One of those sad moments where I have to propose something if nobody else is going to. I have heard the comments of other councillors. This won't be the last of these, because to be absolutely honest, if I was a landowner, I might well consider doing the same thing. I have no animosity whatsoever towards people for behaving in their own rational self-interest. If I was the landowner, perhaps this is something that I would be putting forward. If I was the parish council, I would certainly have echoed the comments that the parish council put forward. If I was Councillor Jones, I would have done as he has done and called the application in for a decision. It being the case that we are hobbled, in my view, by government policy on this, I can see no other recourse except with regret to move the recommendation as printed and to look forward in expectation that some of the concerns that have been raised could potentially be addressed by a more detailed reserved matters or whatever the equivalent application is following a permission in principle like this. We're certainly going to take an interest in what that potential future development looks like should a detailed application come forward. And of course, there are such things as the wildlife and the tunnel underground that have to be addressed. It's not that they can come along and build anything they like. You have to then go through the normal process of seeking planning consent, full planning consent. So I move the recommendation, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Holland. I wouldn't ordinarily do this, but I do agree with the sentiment and form of your argument in terms of we're somewhat in territory where we're testing the water and are somehow bound by the present legislation through no fault of our own. So I'll be prepared from the chair to second the proposal. Do I see any other proposals? No, in which case it's been formally proposed and seconded that we move this as printed. Can I see a show of hands in support of this, please? I see those against. 2. Any abstentions? In which case that item is clearly approved. Thank you, councillors. I agree completely, Councillor Holland. I think we're going to see a lot more of these. Okay. That brings us on to item 5 of the agenda. Public realm and car park to the east and west of King Street, including former garage, King Street, Kidsgrove. Who's this one? Jacob. Over to you, Jacob.
Thank you very much, Chair. Application is for extensions and improvements to the existing car parks and areas of public realm, which would include the demolition of an existing former service garage and the creation of a temporary car park in its place at King Street in Kidsgrove. The site is an area of existing public realm and car parking to either side of King Street, situated north of East Coast Street and south and southwest of Queen Street within Kidsgrove Town Centre proper. Currently consists of 2 separate car parks, one which has 10 spaces, the other with 25 for a total of 35 spaces, and also includes 2 bus stops and a taxi rank. The scheme, once completed, would deliver again 2 separate car parks of 9 and 48 spaces for a total of 57. Among these would be 2 accessible spaces where currently there are none, and 2 EV charging spaces. There's other associated changes such as new seating, planters, street lighting, bus shelters, and some steps leading up from the rest of Kidsgrove Town Centre to this area. We have no objections from any of our statutory consultees, and the scheme delivers well in excess of the 10% BNG net gain that we expect, and your officers recommend that the scheme be approved. I've just included some photographs here of the area if you're not familiar, and I'll yield back.
Thank you, Jacob. We haven't any speakers on this matter, so over to you, members. Councillor Burnett-Faulkner.
The only concerns I've had off residents, being a local councillor, is where you're knocking down what is Brown's Garage at the moment and using it as a temporary car park. People are saying, what is that going to be afterwards? If it's only a temporary car park, why is it only temporary, and what's planned for afterwards?
Thank you very much. The scheme includes that area to knock down the garage, put temporary car parking in its place, so that Kidsgrove Town Centre can still be served by some car parking while this scheme is actually developed. Truth be told, I don't have an answer for you what that will be in the end. No, sorry, I haven't got a solid answer for you of what that will eventually become. But yeah, sorry.
I think the concern is that when you finish using that as a temporary car park, that it'll just be left to go to wasteland, and we don't want that because that'll create an eyesore in the town centre.
Yeah, I mean, I echo your view on that, and I think considering the amount of effort that's being put into improving the public realm, that it would be a bit backwards to leave that to turn to waste ground.
Just come in at that point. Sorry, we could put a condition on that requires details of that following the. When it's no longer required for temporary parking, if that would allay some of your concerns.
That'd be great. Thanks, Rachel.
Williams.
How many disabled car parking places are there, or blue badge places? Yeah.
So as I said, we're delivering 57 spaces total, up from 35, 2 of which are going to be disabled accessible spaces, where currently there aren't any.
Can I come back, Mr. Chairman? Personally, I don't think that's enough. Whether you could put more disabled car parking in front of the shops for the labourers, and then on the corner of the car park, I can't think of the street where there's a row of terraced properties, but they're mostly shops. So they need to be put in those strategic places where it's easier for people with disability to park safely and to go to the shops. So could I ask that there's an increase in disabled car parking, and they're put in strategic places within the car parks, so people can use the shops easily rather than walking full across the car parks.
I think it would be difficult to condition that because it would have an impact on the number of spaces and potentially the layout of the car parking. The Highway Authority have commented on the application and have got no objections, so it would be difficult to sustain an objection on the grounds of insufficient number of disabled spaces. And as I say, I don't think that it meets the tests, or it would meet the tests of a condition to require such a revision. in that way. So I don't think that that's something that we can do as part of the current application.
Sad day, Mr. Chairman, but I hope the two that you're suggesting go in a strategic position where people easily get to the shops, either to the east or the west. I'm not quite sure.
Sorry, I believe that we've got the two EV spaces just here, and I think that these two are the ones that are intended to be the disabled car parking spaces.
Yeah, well, I think we.
I can look more detailed on the plan if you prefer. Okay.
Thank you, councillor. If there's a councillor wishing to speak, please. No. We got any proposers then, please? Councillor Burnett Faulkner.
Can I propose that we accept the proposal with the condition that we find out what's going to be put in place of Brown's Garage when it's completed? Thank you.
Thank you, councillor.
Question on that point, Mr. Chairman. Looking through the report, the word temporary appears, but there's no, am I correct in thinking there's no sort of time limit on this? So temporary is until something emerges, so to speak. And I also, if I may, through you, Mr. Chairman, seek from the officer my view that were something to be proposed there, it would have to come here as a separate planning permission anyway. So if we were to propose, if somebody wanted to build something on the temporary car park site, they would have to bring a proposal forward. Therefore, we would always have cognizance of what was coming because there would be necessarily a proposal to create something on that site.
Yeah, I think certainly if there was to be some sort of a structure on there, it would require planning permission and would need to come back to the committee. I think the sort of condition that I'd got in mind was something that would require details of the treatment of that part of that piece of land once it's no longer car parking. If it's just going to be kept as tarmac, for example, we would want to see, which wouldn't require another planning application. We would want to see those details to ensure that it would look appropriate. So yeah, I hope that's in accordance with what. Yeah, okay.
And I'd be correct in saying that temporary here does not say, it's not 5 years and then it stops or something like that. The temporary is sort of how long is a piece of string sort of thing. Yeah.
There's nothing in there that says how long that may or may not be.
Thank you. Are you happy with that, councillor? So we've had it formally proposed. Councillor seconder, please. Councillor Fear. So we've had it formally proposed and seconded. Can I see a show of hands in support of the application? And that's unanimous. Thank you. That item is passed. This item of business is agenda item 6, 24 Moorthorne Crescent, Bradwell. Who's this one? Sarah, I believe.
Thank you, Chair. This application is for part respective permission for an outbuilding. The site comprises a semi-detached residential property that lies within the urban area of the borough. The outbuilding is 9.8 metres in length, 2.4 metres in width, and the ground level within the property's rear garden gradually rises with the distance from the dwelling, and as a result, the outbuilding is 3.2 metres at the highest part of its pitched roof. The design of the outbuilding is not typical in appearance as it has been constructed partially from an applicant's original greenhouse with an attached wooden element. However, a similar structure could be built under permitted development. It is not considered that the distance between the outbuilding and neighbouring buildings would be detrimental in terms of causing loss of privacy, light or outlook to other properties. And on this basis, we recommend the application be approved. Yeah, and there's photos here to show you. So this is obviously facing towards the property, towards the dwelling itself. This is with your back to the dwelling, looking up the garden. The first picture to the top left, again, that's looking towards the dwelling. The bottom left, this is from the neighbour's property at 26 Moorthorne Crescent. Yeah. Is it showing? Yeah, so bottom left and top right and bottom right are all showing the outbuilding from the neighbouring property, number 26 Moorthorne Crescent. I just move it over if you will. Jake, can you just help us over?
Yes, sure. Is that all right, or do you need it?
We have a speaker on this matter. Supporter of the scheme, Dr. Yusuf Rostami. Would you like to come forward, sir? You have 5 minutes to make your presentation. You're reminded 4 minutes that you have 1 minute remaining. You may begin by pressing the button in front of you.
Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Dr. Yusuf Rostami, and I'm homeowner at 24 Moorthorne Crescent. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak today. I would like to explain briefly the background of and purpose of the structure in my rear garden and why I hope you all support this retrospective application. The building in question is a simple single-story structure, as you see, combining a small greenhouse and a timber shed. It replaced the older structure that were already there for many years, a dilapidated shed and an old greenhouse. The new structure was built on the same part of the garden using timber and lightweight material with a maximum height of about 3 meters. It's used usually purely for domestic and leisure purposes, for storage, for growing plants, and as a calm place for my wife to spend time. It is not habitable building. It has no plumbing, and it is not used as a living accommodation of any kind. When I started the project, I genuinely believed that it fell within permitted development right, as it sits well within the garden, covers less than half of the total outdoor area, and it is modest in both scale and appearance. I later learned that height is slightly above the 2.4 meters limit due to the garden raising ground level, which is why I submitted the retrospective planning application as soon as the council contacted me. I wanted to stress that the building is not visible from the street, and the boundary fences and the mature hedge along number 26 providing screening. So that only a small section of the roof is visible from the neighboring garden, and it has been hidden behind the next door hedging. I have always tried to maintain a good relation with my neighbors, and I regret that some have felt unhappy about this project. I understood from the office's reports that the development does not harm the character or appearance of the area. It does not cause any loss of light, privacy, or outlook for my neighbors, and that more than 50% of the garden remains undeveloped indicates the overall scale is acceptable. The report also confirms that if the building had been just 0.7 meters shorter, it would have been entirely permitted development and would not have required permission. I'm very grateful that the officer have recognized these points. Finally, if I may add the brief personal note, I built this for my wife who has struggled with her mental health after losing much of her family during COVID-19 pandemic. She finds peace and purpose in the gardening, caring for her plants and spending quiet time outdoors. This small space has genuinely helped her recovering and well-being. It is not about the expansion or developments. It is simply about creating a place of comfort and stability for my family. In closing, I respect the planning process and my neighbors' views, and I want to ensure that everything at my property fully complies with policy. I hope that having heard this explanation, you will agree that the building causes no harm, fits comfortably with its surrounding, and should be followed to remain. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Dr. Rustami. Thank you for your contribution. May you rejoin the gallery. Thank you. Councillors, over to you. Councillor Brown and Councillor Holland, followed by Councillor Fear.
Could I just query who called this in? I see there are objections from neighbours, but could I just ask the officers about that, please?
Thank you, Councillor. I believe it was Councillor Adcock, sorry.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Holland.
Thank you, Chair. I've said before I regret retrospective applications. I do mean it when I say that. With the greatest of respect to the representative who is the applicant, it is very difficult to embark on a project like that and to complete it, and at no point to ask yourself the question and to seek guidance either from a legal professional, a planning advisor, or from this authority, which people can do, and at no point to think this might require planning consent. And again, our officer's report refers to how it might have been permitted development rights if it was smaller, and the applicant says it would have been permitted development rights if it was smaller. Well, if my grandmother had wheels, she would have been a bicycle. This is a structure which is nearly 10 metres long. It is 3.2 metres tall. It does require planning consent, and it is regrettable that the application has come in retrospectively with all of the unpleasantness as regards neighbourly relations that entails. One of the objections made against this application was that part of the structure overhangs the boundary line. Can I ask our officers, is it the case that if there is an overhang, if part of this structure interferes with somebody else's property rights, that is a private civil matter between them and not something that we are entitled to take into account when we're making a decision on this?
Yes, I believe that is a civil matter, and I have got a photograph here where it doesn't look as though it would actually hang over the boundary.
I merely say that because it was in our report as one of the objections that have been raised against this. I look forward to what other councillors have to say.
Thank you, Councillor Holland. Councillor Fear.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'd just echo Councillor Holland's thoughts about retrospective applications. They leave a bad odour, and you know, there is a sense, I think, if with the committee most times that somebody's trying it on in this regard, and that's unfortunate. Looking top left, I don't know whether that overhangs or not. It would have been nicer to have a sort of straight thing, but if that's a civil issue, that's a civil issue. Perhaps the most important things for us here are just to clarify a couple of things. I mean, am I correct in saying the footprint of this structure would have fallen within permitted development rights? And is it the case that it's only the height that exceeds that? And you were saying about 2 foot, something like that in real money. I don't think in metric, but would that be right? I'm trying to sort of judge in my own mind, taking that roof down 2 foot, what that would look like. But am I correct in saying that that's the only problem, or is there a footprint problem as well? The other thing that some people, I think when they look at those pictures, might think about is the proximity of this structure to the curtilage of the property. Now, my understanding is that that isn't a problem with permitted development rights, but I'd just like to have that cleared up as well. I think that will be useful for all of us.
Thank you, Councillor Fear.
Thank you. Yes, as far as the footprint's concerned, the property also has extensions built on it, and that with the outbuilding, they still altogether fall below the 50% of the curtilage. So they're less than 50% coverage of the curtilage. So in that respect, it would fall within permitted development. This outbuilding is approximately 0.3 metres away from the boundary, and therefore there are restrictions on the height of an outbuilding under permitted development, and therefore this outbuilding does not meet those requirements because within 2 metres of a boundary, the total height would need to be 2.5 metres. But if this had no roof on it, then we would be looking at an outbuilding that would meet the requirements of permitted development.
But with all due respect, it does have a roof, doesn't it?
It does have a roof, but it's sort of marginally over permitted development. So we would have to look at the fallback position that you could build something similar.
And again, if I just may, the excess of height is what? I've got in my mind, I don't know why, but my computer won't pull up this report for me. But 0.7 sticks in my mind from reading it previously. Is that correct?
0.7, that's only, but in general, it would be 0.5, but unfortunately, there's a gradient difference in the garden, in the garden. So part of the outbuilding is 3.2 metres high, which is 0.7. Which is not 0.7.
Are you content with that answer, Councillor?
I'm content with the answer. I'd be interested in what colleagues feel. I mean, I feel very ambivalent about this.
Councillor Williams.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask the officers if this is approved, could we stop any more development in that garden?
No, it would be that would be an unreasonable condition to impose because there's been lots of appeal decisions which talk about such a condition and say that they should only be imposed in extremely in extremely unique circumstances. That's the word, unique. And this wouldn't be considered to be unique circumstances. Obviously, there would be a ceiling to how much they could do under permitted development in terms of how much of their garden they could cover without buildings under permitted development. And then anything over and above that 50% that Sarah referred to previously would need planning permission anyway. So we would have that control over it at that point.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Gillian Williams.
I just can't see how anybody would live with that in their and as far as passing it, as a definitely. So, if I was looking there as a neighbour looking at that house, that's how it.
The outbuilding is constructed as an original greenhouse and then has had a wooden construction attached to it for the purposes of a greenhouse and storage use. Well, it says it is a detached combined conservatory and shed for greenhouse and storage use.
Sorry, that we'd even consider bringing it to the committee, to be quite honest.
Councillor Gordon, followed by Councillor Holland.
Sorry, Chairman, I thought it was brought to committee because it had been called in. I mean, ordinarily members wouldn't see this sort of application. Am I right? Once again, am I right in terms of planning law that appearance of an outbuilding isn't really an issue? We can't object as an authority to the appearance of an outbuilding. And my other question is, I think somewhere in the report it refers to the reuse of existing materials. I mean, if that's correct, some people would actually say that is very favourable in this day and age. But if you could just clarify about the where we stand in terms of the appearance.
If the structure was permitted development, then we would have no control over it, so we would have no control over the materials. Because it requires planning permission, we are able to have control over the materials. But what we have to do in these sort of circumstances is think, well, if a structure that would be 0.7 metres lower could be built under permitted development rights, is that additional 0.7 of a metre in height, is that so harmful in terms of its materials and its impact on the neighbouring properties? Is it so harmful that we can justify taking issue with that? Whether that's requiring additional alternative materials or refusing the application. And your office's view is that that additional 0.7 metres is not so harmful that we could justify that there is significant harm and therefore justify a refusal.
Holland.
Chair, Councillor Mrs Williams has been characteristically blunt in describing the aesthetics of the structure that has been built. My reflection on that would be that a structure can be very ugly to our eyes, but not illegal. And that again is something that I'm wrestling with. Something can be truly awful to look at, but not illegal. A lot of such things exist. I exist. I'm a really very profoundly ugly to look at, but it is perfectly fine that I exist. I don't want to labour the point. I think looking at the photograph in the top left, I do not believe it is 30 centimetres away from the boundary if the boundary is accurately demarcated by the fence that we can see in the image. But our officers have already made clear, I think, that that would not make a difference. If it were 2 metres away from the boundary, that would contribute to it being potentially permissible under permitted development rights. So it would have to be both shorter and on an entirely different footprint, probably, I would think, within 2 metres of the other boundary, and therefore also requiring planning consent if it was built above a certain height. Again, this is the second time this evening I'm struggling to consider what might reasonably be proposed as a reason for refusing this application. And if we're not going to refuse it, what are we going to do, Chair?
The council wishing to speak. Yes.
Just very quickly, just to clarify that it's not the case that it would need to be 0.7 metres shorter and 2 metres away to be permitted development. It's either of those things. Yeah.
The officer is quite right. I accept the correction.
Councillors wishing to add to the debate or a proposal? I'll take either. Nobody wishing to speak? Okay, in that case, as chair, I will propose that we accept the application as printed. Do I see a seconder for that? No seconder. Oh, Councillor Williams. Thank you, Councillor Williams. So we've had it formally proposed and seconded. Can I see a show of hands in support of this, please? Please raise your hands now. Those against? Those abstaining? That item is passed. Thank you, councillors. Brings us on to agenda item 7, an old favourite, land at Dobbs Pool, Batley. Members will have seen the printed agenda. Are we content to take that as received and keep it on the agenda in the future? If so, can I see a show of hands in support of that, please? And that's unanimously received. Thank you. Any items of urgent business? I'm not aware of any items of urgent business this evening, so therefore I draw the meeting to a close. Thank you very much for your contributions tonight. Have a safe journey, because it's not very nice outside, and a safe journey home. Thank you. The meeting's closed. Thank you.